Okay, another question I'm curious about. Do you guys believe in the concept of moral objectivity, or is morality a continuing human invention that we make up and continue to refine?
I personally think it depends on what the person means when they say objective. I've heard definitions of objective in the conversations about morality that I would be willing to accept, but it wouldn't necessarily be objective to the degree that I tend to think of objective. So that has to be defined up front, what the person means by objective. And usually the ones that I'll accept have to do with the idea that would there be a morality that would be most specific to human society and best suited to human societies. And there's different, I think, things to account for, such as like the size of a society or the demographics of a society. There are so many factors that could occur within any social setting that for me it would be very difficult to think that it would be possible to come up with like a universally accepted objective morality, although I know there are people that sort of work toward that goal, and they do think that it's a more realistic goal than perhaps I would imagine.
Dennis and I had a conversation about this because this idea of moral relativism or subjective morality is one that comes up over and over again, and to answer your question as it was asked, I think the second one is a more accurate representation of my view on it. And what I would say is I'm in agreement with Tracy, or in agreement with something Tracy referenced, that, and I've mentioned this before, for any given situation, there are a number of possible actions. Some of them are going to be better or worse depending on what you value. But by and large, we can at least agree on the simple ones, that this action is better than this one. Now, if that's the case, then in this spectrum, and the fact that there would likely be a limited number of potential actions, there must be some action or set of actions that represent the best possible actions given the values, the precepts that you're beginning with. And that is what I would identify as the objective moral best. But that's objective only in the sense that it comes after we've set up the particular values which I think are personal and subjective. I am the author of my morality. It happens that because we're humans with great similarities and similar goals, that we're going to have a lot of things in agreement, right. A lot of values in agreement.
Well, plus society is going to tolerate only to a certain extent. So, for example, a person's selfish motivations will be tolerated to an extent, and they might be able to enforce that with actual force to a certain extent, but there is a time where society simply steps up and says, this is not going to be tolerated. And so to that degree, you've almost got a check and a balance in that I've got my own desires, but then I also have to consider the social context, because if I don't, society will check that for me.
Yeah. Although I would point out that society could still be wrong, and would be wrong in some cases where, I'm going to disagree with them. But unfortunately, we live in a cooperative society, and sometimes compromises have to be made. Does that come anywhere near answering your question?
It not only comes near, it goes past the finish line and runs the bonus lap.
Cool.
So,
I'll stop talking now.
This is for the Atheist Community of Austin. Do you guys have any special events planned to celebrate the big non-event of December 21st of 2012?
No, other than I've promised myself that I won't stop doing this show until after that date. Unless I'm, kicked off, or we lose the show, or something other. Assuming everything continues as normal, I'm going to do this show at least that long, so that I can sit here and laugh my ass off the weekend after December 20, whatever it is, 22nd, 23rd, 2012.
21,
I don't know.
Right? 1, 2, 2, 1. I don't know. 1, 2.
I am disappointed that all this nonsense over 2012 is probably going to ruin John Cusack's career, but
I don't think it'll ruin it. It'll just stand as a bad mark for bad acting roles, and Nick Cage keeps getting work despite bad acting roles like Knowing.
Well, Nick Cage is right now selling off his castles, so I think his bad roles might be paying off. But anyway.
Okay, then that's something to consider. But yeah, I'm looking forward to 2013, 2014, just chuckling and saying, hey, the world's still here. And it's still going to be here in 2037 when it doesn't end in 2036.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot for calling.
Yeah, thanks for your time. And just on a technical note, I've been experiencing this weird echo chamber effect, listening to sort of double overlap when you guys are talking. But hopefully your audio techs can get that figured out.
We're lucky we have sound at all. But thanks.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.
Yeah, for those who don't know, who tuned in late or who watched some abridged version of the show on the internet, which I think is likely, we had all kinds of problems today with audio. It's been amusing and kind of fun as people crawl around on the floor and hand us mics and we swap mics. Give us a couple more weeks and we'll have everything, I don't know.
Ironed out.
Smoother? Maybe not smooth, but
smoothierest.
Smoothier. Anyway, we've got, if I only got 2 lines, is the third line not working? Anyway, I've got James in Rome, New York.
Yep, hello.
How you doing, James?
I'm good. How are you, Matt?
I'm not bad.
Hey.
All right. I've got a verse here from the Bible. It's Ezekiel 10:20. And it says, each of them had 4 faces, 4 wings, and what looked like a human hand under each wing. Their faces looked exactly like the faces I had seen nearby the Cheber River or something to that effect, however you pronounce it. But I was wondering if you have read that verse and if you think that he's describing what Christians believe is angels, because that just sounds absolutely ridiculous. And it doesn't say in that verse, but there was a different verse somewhere that I'm not sure what it was, but it said that the faces were that of a lion and a sheep and a person. It was just strange.
I don't think that's what a Christian would think of as an angel. The Christian references to angels, when you go back into the Old Testament and you read stories where they talk about angels being involved, are usually described just as men. They are, divine men. They're like men from, sent as emissaries from God. I don't mean that they're just regular people, but the way they're described is usually men in really expensive-looking or bright-colored clothing. So I don't know what these things would be, but they probably wouldn't be an angel. And I think somewhere in the New Testament there's a story about, I want to say it was Peter went to prison or something, and when he gets released, he goes back to his friends, and they are afraid to open the door because they think he's still locked up, and they assume it's Peter's angel.
Yeah.
And so I'm really of the opinion that most of the time angels were just thought of as looking a lot like people.
Yeah, it's just completely crazy. I mean, it's absurd enough to think of angels, but then saying they have 4 wings and 4 faces, that of humans and animals. I just thought that was odd, and I just thought I'd get your take on that, but thank you.
Who knows what grows in the desert that they may have consumed?
Yeah, I agree. It's odd. This is one of the things where you're talking about books written thousands of years ago, and then translated from languages which are now in some cases dead, not in this particular passage, but certainly language has changed over that time, and it tends to reflect the period that it's in, and we can't always be very good about figuring that out. But in this case, you've got something, and you're trying to figure out, okay, is this guy just describing a dream, in which case I'd say, okay, he had a really weird dream. What's the big deal? Why are you attaching significance to this guy's really weird dream? Is it because it was so weird that it must have been significant? Because that's silly. And if it wasn't a dream, if it was a hallucination or vision, whatever,
right.
Okay, same answer. And if instead he's using some kind of poetry to describe something, well, all right, that's interesting, but it's useless.
Animal-human hybrid creatures are not unheard of outside of the Bible. I mean, you have like the Minotaur, and you have like all of the Egyptian gods, and I mean, so there's something to be said for humans with animal heads.